So one of my recent reels where I showed how to obtain the length of a ridge board on a hip-den roof, a lot of people were a bit confused as to why I added 22.5mm to the length of the ridge. So I thought I'd just do some sketches to try and help people understand the reasoning behind it. On a lot of these videos it's difficult to explain complexities of things. So yeah, here's a few simple drawings that might help people out. So if you've got a side elevation view of a roof, so imagine that's a rafter and a ridge. Plan view, so that's a ridge and two hips of a hip end. And an end view, so rafter meeting a ridge in the centre. So as you can see, I've got this dotted line above the solid lines. I've got dotted lines left and right of these lines, and I've got a small triangle above the ridge there. So as I mentioned on the video before, when you work out roofs using trigonometry, geometry, however you're doing it, you're working with a single line. So at this point, you know, your calculator or your Ready Reckoner roof book, whatever, doesn't know how thick any of your timber is. You know, there's always a thickness of timber that you're using. So for example, when your roof comes up to an apex, if you had two rafters without a ridge, they'd meet at a point. Ridges are always flat on the top, so there's an invisible apex above the ridge line that's never met unless you had, you know, an angled cut on top of your ridge, which never really is the case. So looking at this side elevation here, you can see that the true height of the ridge is this dotted line, not the solid line. That'll be where it's flat. But look, it also travels up at an angle to meet that essentially invisible line on the top. And then looking at a plan view, so when you work out a roof, you always minus half thickness of the ridge from your common. So if there was a common rafter here, common rafter there, you minus 22.5mm if it was a 45mm thick timber, which it typically is in the UK, off both of these. So you would do it off this one as well, because if these were set at 45 degrees to a 90-degree corner of a building, that's why I've got this small dotted line here, if you see. So, and that's why you add the 22.5mm to the ridge, because you're minusing it from these commons. This is your crown or king common at the end here. So this should be the same length as those.